You know, in all my years on this earth, I've seen many foolish things. But the story I'm about to tell you might just take the prize for the most beautiful kind of foolishness I've ever witnessed. This happened not too long ago, right here in Lagos. And if you think you've heard every love story there is to hear, well, settle down and let me prove you wrong. If stories about real love still matter to you, go ahead and subscribe, because this one will remind you that the heart wants what money can't buy. Now let me tell you about Chuka Ezebuiro. This young man, and when you're my age, anyone under 40 is young. This young man was one of those people you read about in newspapers. Forbes. Africa had his face plastered on their cover, not once, but 3 times. Technology money, real estate, oil investments. The boy was swimming in wealth. His mansion in Banana Island was so big, I heard people joke that you'd need to take Uber just to get from the kitchen to the sitting room. Imported everything. Cars that cost more than most people's houses. The kind of money that opens every door in Nigeria. But here's the thing about money, and I've lived long enough to know this. It can buy you a crowd, but it can't buy you companionship. It can get you admirers, but not affection. And poor Chuka was learning this lesson the hard way. Every woman who smiled at him saw dollar signs before they saw his face. They counted his cars before they counted his words. They fell in love with his portfolio, not his personality. I remember my father used to say, when you're rich, you'll never know if they love you or if they love what you can do for them. That was Chuka's problem right there. One particular morning, after another disappointing encounter with a woman who spent more time asking about his business than his beliefs, Chuka sat in his car with his driver, a wise old man named Baba Kemi. Baba, Chuka said, I want love, not luxury hunters. Baba Kemi looked at him through the rear-view mirror and said something that changed everything. Oga, if you want to catch fish, you don't go to the desert. If you want to find real love, maybe you're fishing in the wrong pond. That night, Chuka couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Baba Kemi's words. Where do you find genuine love when everyone knows your bank account balance before they know your middle name? And then, like lightning striking twice in the same place, an idea came to him. A crazy, ridiculous, absolutely mad idea. The next morning, Chuka did something that would have given his financial advisors heart attacks. He shaved off his carefully groomed beard. He put on a faded singlet that looked like it had seen better decades. He left his mansion, his cars, his entire identity behind. He went to Market and rented a small butcher stall. Just like that, billionaire Chuka Ezebuiro became Ugo the meat seller. Now let me tell you something about markets. They don't lie. There's no pretense in a place where people are trying to make their daily bread. You work with your hands, you sweat under the sun, you haggle over 5 naira. It's real life, stripped of all the fancy packaging. Chuka learned this quickly. His soft hands got calloused within days. His back ached from carrying meat on his shoulders. He had to learn to speak pidgin properly, not the polished English of boardrooms. The other traders looked at him sideways at first. This one, where he come from, they whispered. But slowly they accepted him. In the market, if you work hard and mind your business, you belong. And that's where he met her, Kemi. She had a stall right across from his, selling onions, peppers, and tomatoes. Strong woman, that one. The kind who could carry 2 baskets on her head and still have energy to argue with a customer trying to cheat her out of 10 naira. She was loud, not in a crude way, but in the way of someone who had learned that if you don't speak up for yourself, nobody else will. sharp-tongued too. She could insult you so creatively that you'd almost want to thank her for the education. But underneath all that toughness was a heart as soft as boiled yam. Their first encounter was typical of the market. Chuka was still learning the ropes, still figuring out how to handle the meat properly. A piece fell from his table onto the ground near her stall. "Oga," Kemi called out. "Your meat dey smell. You want poison people?" "Now your pepper dey blind nose," Chuka shot back, trying to sound like he belonged there. She looked at him like he had two heads. "You dey craze? Which kind apprentice meat seller you be sef?" But something in the way she said it made them both laugh. Not the polite laughter of his wealthy social circles, but real, belly-shaking laughter. From that day, something began to grow between them. It started with small conversations during the slow afternoon hours, when the market was quiet. She told him about her life, how she'd been selling in the market since she was 16, after her mother died and left her to care for 3 younger siblings. "This market," and she said one day, "now my university. I learn everything here. How to judge character, how to work hard, how to make small money become big money through smart spending." She told him about the men who had tried to court her over the years. Most of them want someone they can impress with small money. They buy you wrapper today, tomorrow they think they own you. Me, I know they fall for that kind thing. "What kind of man you want?" Chuka asked, genuinely curious. "Simple man. Someone where go love me true. No forming, no fake life. Just real person with real heart." As weeks passed, they became inseparable during market hours. She would bring him food she cooked at home, simple meals that tasted better than anything his personal chef had ever prepared. He helped her wash her buckets at the end of long days. She never asked what he owned outside the market. She only cared about who he was during those 8 hours they spent side by side, building something neither of them had expected to find. For the first time in his adult life, Chuka felt truly seen. Not as a bank account with legs, not as a business opportunity, but as a man. A man with thoughts, fears, dreams, and a heart that had been waiting for exactly this kind of simple, honest love. He learned things about himself he never knew. That he could find joy in small victories, like selling all his meat before closing time. That he could feel proud of work that made his back ache and his hands dirty. That happiness didn't require expensive restaurants or exotic vacations. Kemi taught him the market gossip, the politics of who to trust with credit, the art of judging a customer's seriousness by their posture. She showed him how to arrange his display to attract buyers, how to keep his meat fresh in the Lagos heat. "You dey learn fast," she told him one evening as they closed their stalls. "But you still talk like books sometimes. Where you go school?" Chuka had become so comfortable in his new identity that he almost slipped up. I read a lot," he said quickly. "That one good?" Kemi nodded approvingly. "Book sense and street sense, a good combination." 3 months into his market life, Chuka had never been happier. He woke up excited to see Kemi, to hear her laugh, to learn something new about this woman who was showing him what love could look like when it wasn't transactional. He was even considering how to tell her the truth about his identity when everything changed in a single moment. It was a busy Friday morning when one of his meat suppliers arrived late with the day's stock. Chuka was haggling over the price, trying to maintain his cover as a small-scale trader, when the supplier suddenly stopped mid-sentence and stared at him. "Oga Chuka," the man said, his voice loud enough for half the market to hear. "Chuka Ezebuiro, now you dey sell meat for market like apprentice?" The words hit the air like a bomb. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Within seconds, people were pulling out their phones, snapping pictures, recording videos. "That's him," someone shouted. "The billionaire, the one we day for Forbes. What he day do here? Maybe na poverty catch am? Or he day shoot film?" The crowd grew bigger. Vendors abandoned their stalls to come and stare. The whispers became shouts. The confusion became chaos. And through it all, Chuka could only look at Kemi. She stood frozen behind her table, her mouth slightly open, her eyes moving from him to the crowd and back to him again. The expression on her face was unreadable: shock, confusion, maybe betrayal. "Everyone, please," Chuka said, his natural accent slipping through despite his attempts to maintain the pidgin. "Let me explain." But the crowd was in no mood for explanations. This was the biggest thing to happen in Mile 12 Market in years. A billionaire pretending to be one of them. Some people were angry, feeling mocked. Others were excited, already planning how to sell their story to the newspapers. Chuka pushed through the crowd and gently took Kemi's arm. "Please," he said quietly, "let me talk to you privately." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. They walked away from the chaos, finding a quiet spot behind the market near the loading bay. For a full minute, neither of them spoke. Kemi just stared at him, like she was seeing him for the first time. Finally, Chuka broke the silence. "My name is Chuka Ezebuiro. I'm not a poor man, Kemi. I came here because I was tired of people loving my money instead of loving me. I wanted to find someone who would love me without knowing what I could buy for them. And I found you." Kemi didn't speak. She just kept staring. "I know I lied to you," Chuka continued. "I know this must feel like betrayal. But everything else was real. My feelings for you, the way I laughed with you, the peace I found here, all of that was real." Still, Kemi said nothing. "Please say something," Chuka begged. Kemi looked up at the sky, then back at him. Then, to Chuka's complete surprise, she started laughing. Not the bitter laughter of someone who felt mocked, but pure, honest, relieved laughter. "You mean," she said between giggles, "all this time I've been insulting a billionaire? All those times I called you useless apprentice and yeah boy? Holy Spirit, carry me, oh." Chuka stared at her in amazement. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. "You're not angry?" "Angry for what?" Kemi wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. "You won't tell me, say, you been dey suffer yourself for 3 months, carrying meat under sun, just to find woman where go love you true. That one no be crime, no sacrifice." She stepped closer to him. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you. Thank you for letting me fall in love with the man, not the money. Thank you for giving me chance to know who you really are before I know wheretin you get. Because now I know, say the Chuka way I love for this market. Now the same Chuka way get all that money. Money no change it just hide am small." Standing there behind Mile 12 Market, surrounded by the smell of fish and the sounds of Lagos traffic, Chuka felt like the richest man in the world. And for once, it had nothing to do with his bank account. "So what happens now?" he asked. Kemi smiled. "Now, you go carry me. Go your house make. I see this mansion way big like city. But first, make we go back to market. People they wait for explanation. And I want make sure my onions no spoil while we day hear they do love story." That evening, after they had faced the market crowd together, Kemi proudly standing beside him as he explained his unconventional approach to finding love, Chuka took her to his Banana Island mansion. Kemi's reaction was priceless. She walked through the house slowly, touching surfaces like she couldn't believe they were real. "Jesus Christ," she exclaimed when she saw the swimming pool. "This thing big past my whole street." But what impressed her most wasn't the luxury. It was the simplicity of his bedroom. Just a bed, a wardrobe, and a small reading corner. You no be the flashy type, she observed. Even with all this money, you still they live simple. I learned that from you, Chuka said. In the market, I learned that happiness doesn't come from having the most expensive things. It comes from having the right people around you. 6 months later, they had a wedding that became the talk of Lagos. Not because of how expensive it was, but because of how unique it was. Kemi insisted on inviting everyone from miles south market. The guest list included billionaires and onion sellers, tech entrepreneurs and pepper grinders, society ladies and market women. For her going-away gift, Kemi gave her onion stall to another struggling woman with children to feed. Make she get the same chance way I get, she explained. Chuka transformed his former meat stall into a permanent free food center for widows and struggling families in the market. That place gave me the greatest gift of my life, he said. Time to give back. Their love story became legend in Lagos. People would point to them as proof that true love still existed, that there were still people willing to strip away everything false to find something real. But for Chuka and Kemi, the real victory wasn't in proving anything to anyone else. It was in knowing that they had found each other honestly, that their love was built on truth rather than transaction. You see, my dear listeners, this story teaches us something important about love and life. The richest people aren't always the loudest. True wealth isn't always visible from the outside. And genuine love, the kind that lasts, the kind that satisfies, that love never checks your pocket before it checks your heart. In this world where everyone is trying to impress everyone else, where social media makes us all perform versions of ourselves, maybe we need to learn from Chuka's foolishness. Maybe sometimes the bravest thing you can do is strip away everything you think makes you valuable and see if anyone loves what's left. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want someone to see us, really see us, and choose to stay. Not because of what we can provide, but because of who we are when everything else is taken away. If this story touched something in your heart, if it reminded you that real love is still possible in this complicated world, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because stories like this, stories that remind us what truly matters, these are the stories we all need to keep telling. Remember, the heart wants what money can't buy. And sometimes you have to lose everything you think you are to find out who you really are.